All right, guys, we're still looking at lesson 2.3. We're going to work on do the math. So if you want to follow along, you can pull that up. It says, please click to get started. All right, so it says the formula for the volume of a square pyramid is V equals 1/3 S squared H, where S is the length of the side of the square base and H is the height of the pyramid. Express H in terms of other variables. All right, when it says express H in terms of other variables, that means we're solving for H. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Before we even look at what it gives us, let's see if we can solve it for H, because that's what we're going to have to be able to do, is take the formula and be able to solve it for the variable it asks us to. So we start with V equals 1/3 S squared H. So our goal is to get H by itself. So the first thing we need to do is, what can we multiply by to get rid of 1/3? You know, this is multiplication, and some of you may say, well, you need to divide by 1/3, but dividing a fraction by a fraction, that's just kind of nasty. But you can multiply by the reciprocal, which is 3/1, or just 3. And 1/3 of 3 is 1. So that's the same thing as dividing. It's just easier when you're doing the math. All right, so we have 3 times V equals S squared H. All right, we're still solving for H, which means we're trying to get it by itself. We have S squared times H, so we need to divide to get rid of the multiplication. All right, anything divided by itself is 1, so that cancels, and H equals 3V over S squared. All right, so we have expressed H in terms of the other variables. All right, so let's see what the questions are asking us to do. All right, it says state the given formula. V equals 1/3 S squared H. Use the multiplication property of equality. All right, so what they do first, they did the same thing. They multiplied 3, so the 1/3 times 3 reduces to 1. It goes away, and that leaves them with 3V on the left. All right, and then they divided both sides by S squared, so that leaves them with just H on this side. So they did the same thing with us. They just did most of the steps, and we did all the steps. All right, let's look at the next question. All right, the next question says solve the literal equation bx plus d divided by a equals c for x. All right, so let's do that again. Bx plus d divided by a, that equals c. And it says solve for x. So our x is here. It's on the left side in the middle of all this other stuff. All right, so this division kind of groups the top together and separate from the bottom. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of the division. So let's multiply everything by the denominator, which is a. And that means that's a over 1, so that's going to cancel with the denominator. That's going to leave bx plus d is equal to ac. Again, if we have ca, ac, it doesn't matter. I just used commutative property to put my variables in order. I just like them to be in alphabetical order. That does not have to happen, but it just makes it nicer. All right, again, we're solving for x. I can't forget what we're solving for. So I need to get rid of this addition. Remember, when you're solving an equation, you're kind of going in reverse of order of operations. You're undoing things instead of doing order of operations. So we have to undo this process. So we're going to have bx equals ac minus d. And then again, we're still solving for x, so we got to get rid of that b. Multiplication, the opposite of multiplication is division. So divide both sides by b. X equals AC minus D over B. All right, now let's see what they give us to work with. All right, so they give us the original equation, which is given. So what do we need after that? All right, you can see the next thing they do is they use multiplication property because we have to multiply both sides by a. And when we do that, we're going to get bx plus d. So we're going to have bx plus d equals 2. And then over here we had ac. Oh, they put them in alphabetical order as well. Good. All right, and then after that it says subtraction property, so they subtracted d from both sides. So if I subtract d from this side, it's going to leave me with just bx. And then if I subtract d from here, I'm going to have ac minus d. And then here I had to divide by b on both sides, so that was my division property. And that left x equals ac minus d over b. So ac minus d over b should be the last answer there. So you don't have to work this out first, but I feel like if you work this out first, it helps you understand the process, the steps of what you're doing. Plus, if you're asked to do something like this, you already know what you're looking for. All right, let's move on down. Select all of the true statements. Okay, so these are talking about restrictions. Okay, so restrictions we haven't talked about much, but a restriction comes from when you divide, like right here, hopefully you know that you cannot divide by 0. Anytime you divide by 0, like if you have 1 divided by 0, that's undefined. All right, always and forever. Everything to do with math, if you see a 0 in the denominator, it means it's undefined. So right off the bat, a cannot be equal to 0, or this equation doesn't mean anything. It would be undefined. So the first thing we're going to do is go down here and see about a. So we're going to click a cannot equal 0. Okay, so it's just a restriction. We're saying because a was in the denominator, a can't be 0, or the equation would be undefined. Okay, then we go back up here and we have to look at anywhere in the equation where it has division. There's no division here or here, but in the last step, we're dividing by a different variable, which is b. So now we have to say b also cannot be equal to 0. So b cannot be equal to 0, or it would be undefined. All right, so that's all I have on this for literal equations. If you have any questions, let me know.